Okay, so I wanted to do this video just on my story. Uh, Basically, so whenever we as a whatever, whenever you are watching my videos, just so you have a basic idea of where I'm coming from, um, and then also I guess just information about Addison's disease because I had a pretty textbook case. So basically, I don't know. I didn't have like all, well, whatever. I don't remember the full list of symptoms, but I had a lot of the standard ones. So I don't know if you're a nursing student or whatever. Maybe this will help you. You probably shouldn't watch it. Well, I don't know. It's up to you. It's not going to be a anatomy and physiology lecture. Um, I will present the research on that later, but this one's just my story. Um, so yeah, to put this in perspective, right now when I'm recording this, it's March 2013. Well, March 2014. And my first symptoms were in January 2013, so a little over a year ago. And yeah, so that's when the very beginning. But the thing with Addison's is it, at least in every case that I've read about, the symptoms accumulate, like they build up. So at first it starts out pretty manageable. Then after a while, it becomes pretty horrible, and you're wondering what the heck is wrong with you. So that's what happens. And for me, it started out, and if you're wondering, I decided to write this all out. I've made several of these videos, and I just don't like how incoherent they are. So I figured that writing up bullet points would make it better. So I started out with morning nausea, and it wasn't too bad. It was just weird. I've never really had morning nausea before. Um, and then the next thing I noticed was salt cravings, which is also weird because I haven't really had salt cravings before. Um, so so yeah, like I would always want things like potato chips, beef jerky, pizza rolls. Those were big on my list after a while. For another reason I'll share farther down, but yeah, pizza rolls were a big deal for me while I was experiencing worse and worse Addisonian symptoms. The next up, hyperpigmentation. As a consequence of Addison's disease, you get really tan. Well, if you have primary Addison's disease, there's primary and secondary Addison's disease. They're slightly different, and the primary people, like myself, get super tan, like so tan that people think you're of a different ethnicity. Like, don't even think I was Caucasian anymore. Um, yeah, so like people who didn't know me, like they they were surprised that I was white. Let's leave it at that. It was kind of weird, super weird, but whatever. And then next, I had occasional hypoglycemia. So basically, like just energy crashes, which I ordinarily wouldn't have. I mean, everybody normally is able to prevent that. I mean, that's a property of cortisol. It will prevent hypoglycemia. Um, but yeah, so I'd crash during the middle of the day sometimes, just feel super tired, and really it'd be unprovoked sometimes, like just after class. It's not like I really exerted myself or anything, but I'd just be really tired, and that was weird. Eventually, I learned to compensate just by like carrying around gummy bears and stuff. I carry around sugar with me. Well, not raw sugar, but just candy, and that worked pretty well. That helped out. But I mean, obviously, it's just a band-aid on. It's not a solution to the problem. But I didn't really know what the full problem was. All I knew was like, oh, I'm hypoglycemic, therefore eat sugar to increase blood sugar so I can function. And once again, that was weird. I haven't really needed to do that before. And then next, I just had like a complaint of just general fatigue. General fatigue. Watch How I Met Your Mother. But yeah, so just feeling tired all the time. Just like feeling a step below my normal self. And that also carried over into mentally. Mentally, I was just extra tired as well. So that was sad because I had to work harder to get the same grades. I had to work harder just to focus in life. So it wasn't very fun, but at the same time, I had no idea it was Addison's. The next, where the pizza rolls come in, more largely, I lost 25 pounds over that spring semester, spring 2013, and that doesn't normally, and it happened against my will. I was trying to keep my weight on. I started out around 200 pounds, and then I got down to 175 by the end of the semester. And that's while I was fighting this weight loss the whole time. Enough that I ordinarily am somebody who likes to eat whole foods. Not go to Whole Foods, but, like eat fruits and vegetables, rice, bread. Just not frozen stuff that could be accused of being empty calories and just a bunch of saturated fat and salt. Normally I steer away from that, but in this case, I'm losing weight rapidly, and I don't know what to do. And also, I have this nausea, so I can't eat a lot. So what I did, I'm like, well, and also I knew I had these salt cravings, and I was assuming that I had them because I was losing salt, because I lived in South Florida at the time, and I was riding my bike. Excuse me. I was riding my bike 20 minutes to school and 20 minutes back from school. And South Florida is fairly humid, fairly hot. And also, the drivers kind of stress you out. Like, anybody's been there who's ridden their bike there, they know. One of my friends got hit by a car while he was on his bike. Granted, he was breaking the rules and totally got nailed for it. But at the same time, it's like, it just kind of shows how dangerous, I guess, it is. And I never got hit. I rode my bike around there for like 3 years. Never got hit, but I also, I played everything very cautiously. And I almost got hit a couple times, even though it wasn't my fault. But whatever. So when I was losing all that weight, and also part of my justification with the pizza rolls, with the salt, is like, yeah, I'm out there sweating, getting freaked out by people. So it seemed justified. Then, lastly, on my list of symptoms, the symptoms as they slowly accumulated, I'd say accumulating weakness. So just weakness that slowly built up over the semester. That, and also, I guess one part of my educational history is I went to a vocational school for exercise science, and I passed that, and I passed the personal training certifications. So basically, I know how to exercise, and I know how to progress in exercise, and I'm a very research-oriented person and progression-oriented person. So if I'm not progressing when I exercise, I don't really see a point to it. So for me, that's my primary focus. And when I'm exercising and losing strength, losing endurance, losing muscle size, and that's weird. It generally doesn't happen to me unless I planned to prioritize one thing over another, and so I knew I needed to lose some strength in order to gain some endurance or something. But this wasn't planned, and I just kept on getting weaker. It's fantastically frustrating, especially when you don't know what's going on and you think you're just stressed out. Yeah, so those are my symptoms that built up. Then next, I have to move into my Addisonian crisis. So an Addisonian crisis is where everything just builds up to this one point where you, as an Addisonian, are capable of dying, essentially. Like, it just gets that severe. So, pretty much a life or death situation, generally. That or life or super pain, I guess. I don't know. So for me, my only, fingers crossed, my only Addisonian crisis so far was in April 2013. So it's at the end of that semester, and it's a week before finals, which made it that much harder, I guess. But I wake up that morning and I have my morning nausea, like normal, but this time I threw up, which throwing up was like something I'd do like once every couple weeks. So it wasn't like normal, but it wasn't not normal. So I knew it was going to be a bad day, but I didn't realize it was going to be super bad. Anyway, so I ride my bike to school, and I actually, whatever. Well, okay, I felt bad, and I was kind of thinking about skipping class, but I'd proofread one of my friends in class papers, and I wanted to give her my own input because I mean that was part of the assignment in class, and I didn't want to be some kid who just mooches off of other people's work and mooches off of other people's help and doesn't give the help back. So whatever, I'm noble, noble or crazy. She probably would have understood. But anyway, so I get there, and I get to the English class that I gave the paper to my friend in, and I'm sitting there, and I have some pretty severe nausea from that morning. It hadn't gone away. And I had some major fatigue. I'm super tired physically and mentally. And then lastly, I started to develop, it was the first time for me to experience this. Since then, I've experienced it quite a few times, but I had this intermittent fever and chills. So basically, I'd feel really hot for like 30 minutes and then feel really cold for like, I don't know, like 20 minutes or something, and really hot, really cold, really hot, really cold. And that just kept on going on while I'm in class. And I actually continued the rest of the day, but this is my first time to experience it, a novel sensation. It was interesting, but at the same time, like, it's not pleasant. So I get through that class, and then I decide, like, all right, I should probably just go home. So I did. So I hop on my bike and get ready to go home. At this point, like, I'm really drained. I had already been tired that morning, and then riding my bike to class made it worse. Because keep in mind, I mean, I was nauseous and I threw up, so I threw up everything that I had in me that morning. So any water and any whatever food I got down, I don't remember, probably just some potato chips. Honestly, that's what breakfast became, like eating a few hundred calories of potato chips, or like 200, like just something really small, but just wanted to get something in me. But this time I failed, threw it up, and yeah. So now after class, I'm getting ready to go back home. I'm really tired, and I'm kind of freaking out too because these symptoms are really weird. I I hadn't come across anything like this. Um, yeah. So basically, at this point in time, I'm feeling like it's kind of a do or die moment. It was just very intimidating. I didn't really know what to do, but I just wanted to get home. I wanted to get home, and I wanted to try to eat something. I wanted to try to get some water in me, and then just lay down and go to sleep. So that was my plan, but at the same time, I'm like freaked out by the bike ride home because I'm very weak and I'm like fighting to maintain consciousness, just stay awake. Uh, yeah, I really don't know what to add to that, but it was it was the hardest, probably the hardest like 30 minutes of my life, just struggling to stay alive essentially. And I swear, I mean, the ocean breeze is nice a lot of the time, but that day it was horrible because it was right in my face, and I'm really weak at this point. So I'm like, like you'd stand up to pedal when you're going up a hill when you're riding your bike. Like I did that the whole way, even though Florida's pretty flat. Like you have bridges, and bridges are like the highest incline you'll go over, and it only like inclines like 30 feet or something. So it was rough. Thank God there weren't hills. That'd be horrible. But yeah, so thankfully I make it. Some guy almost hits me in the crosswalk, even though I had the right of way. But I make it, and then I just go to bed. I think I was able to get a couple of potato chips in me, and then I went to bed. And then Lisa comes home. Lisa's my wife, and she's like, "Man, you don't look very good." Or pretty much. I don't remember exactly what our conversations were, but she starts mildly freaking out, which I mean, it's probably the right thing to do in that situation. So we go to the nurse practitioner at my school. It's going to Florida Atlantic University at that point, and unfortunately, well, I don't think there's much of it. I don't think there are many nurse practitioners who would know immediately looking at somebody and just asking them a few questions that they have Addison's disease. And if they did, it'd be kind of weird because Addison's is super rare. Like 1 or 2 out of 100,000 people have it. So it's like, why do you know that? Why don't you focus more on common things? That would be my own take on it. But anyway, so I go to the nurse practitioner. They don't know what's wrong after just asking me a few questions. And then they draw, in order to figure out what's wrong, they draw blood. Um, Unfortunately, like I threw up while she was drawing my blood. I don't think she's had that happen too often, but thankfully she was able, like, while drawing my blood, able to grab a puke bucket and give it to me. It actually wasn't a puke bucket. I think it was actually like something you urinate into, but whatever. It served as a puke bucket. Um, so once I did that, and I told them, like, look, I'm sorry, I apologize. I totally didn't feel like I was gonna puke until you pricked me, and I've never puked while getting blood drawn before. So when I kind of told them that, they're like, all right, you seem like you're even more messed up than we thought. So if any of your symptoms get worse, go to the ER. You need to. Um, and basically, they would get the blood results back the next day. They're gonna expedite for me. Normally, it'd take a few days, but they're like, you look bad, so um, we'll get it back in a day. But they also told me, yeah, like go to the ER, most likely, especially if anything is slightly worse. So go home again, um, basically just with a warning from the nurse practitioner, like just err on the side of caution, go to the ER, and well, go to the ER if it gets worse. And all my symptoms get worse. I can't eat or drink anything. Um, like Lisa even gave me just an ice cube, so to see if we could get that small amount of liquid in me, and it still caused me to throw up. Uh, and then I think after that, or maybe it was at that point, um, I threw up blood. And ironically, blood actually looks like coffee grounds when you throw it up. Because you didn't know what it was. uh, Googled it. It's blood. So Lisa and I were like, well, that's not good. So Lisa called one of her nurse friends, and her nurse friend basically said, like, I don't know what it is, but you should probably go to the ER. And I called my mom. Well, Lisa called my mom. And my mom, as you can predict, a mother would say, go to the ER. So we went to the ER. And so Lisa, oh, my bad. Lisa dropped me off at the front because there wasn't any parking up front, and she didn't want me to walk across the parking lot. Just wanted to get in there as soon as I could. Go to the ER. I kind of stumble in there, and there's there's nobody in the waiting room, which I thought was really weird. So I walk up to the people at the front desk and I'm like, so where's the ER? Like, this is the ER. And I think they thought I was crazier than I really felt like I was, just because it made sense to me that in an ER there's going to be a big waiting room, because that's how it's always been every time I've gone into one before. But this time it's just me, so I got a priority seat in the ER. They take me back and basically I told them I'm dehydrated, like I haven't been able to eat anything. And so like, all right, solution for dehydration is to give somebody a saline solution. So that makes sense. So it's just water and salt. Um, the problem is I'm really dehydrated, so it's hard to get the needle in my vein. And it ends up taking them 3 tries. Uh, yeah. Unfortunately, it was the first try. Like I'm just sitting there, like just taking the pain as a needle is put into me, and like trying to yeah, just trying to find the blood vessel. So I'm taking it like a champ, you know, doing my best to move the process along, because I mean, Lord knows I want to feel better. So yeah, the first try I'm okay with, but they're unsuccessful, and that's sad. So I'm like, well, gotta go again, and so they start digging in there, and at this point, I start convulsing, um, or maybe that's too strong of a word, but I start shaking and I can't control it, like full body shaking. Um, and these guys, I mean, none of us know that I have asthma at this point, and so the guys there are two guys. I don't know if they're nurses or what, but they're trying to get that needle in me, and they're like, "Dude, you gotta stop. It's all in your head. You gotta focus." And I'm focused, man. I'm focused as much as I can focus, and I'm just like trying as hard as I can to stay. Uh, I don't know. I want to say solid, but just stationary. There we go. But I can't. I'm just shaking along, and and that was a pretty scary feeling, you know. I mean, to lose control of your movement. That's never happened to me before, and it makes their job tremendously more difficult to have a moving target than when you couldn't even find it when it's a stationary target. But so yeah, they fail again the second time. Then they try it a third time and they nail it somehow. And they draw blood first through that needle, so they can try to get a read on whatever I've got. And then after that, they start pumping me full of that saline solution in the IV. Um, I guess, yeah, like first they find out, okay, the saline solution isn't working. Uh, it didn't increase my blood sodium like at all, which it should have, but and a normal person it would have. But then they get my blood result back, and sorry, I just got a yawn. My bad. It's been a long day. Um, so they get my blood sodium back, and it's 116, which had no significance to me until they told me the normal range, a healthy person will be between 146 and 135. And I'm way down here. 116. So I'm what, like 19 points below what it should be. And also to put this in perspective, I talked with my physical therapist friend after this. My thing is after got out of the hospital even, and he told me he's like, dude, I had a patient who had asthmas, and she was fine when her blood sodium was at 125. But as soon as she dropped down to 124, she just went insane. He's like, literally insane. Like, started just freaking out and convulsions. and like not knowing where she was, just totally crazy. He's like, so when you told me that you had 116, it's like I thought you must have just been gone. Thankfully, I don't know. I mean, for some reason, my brain was okay with 116. Well, not okay, but like functioning at 116, like kind of limping along, but functioning. Um, and with that blood sodium reading, the doctor's like, well, or the ER doctor, she's like, I don't know what's wrong with you, but there is something wrong, and you have to stay here because if you leave, I mean, you're gonna have a rough time. I probably would have gone to seizures and died if I would have left. But so I made the obvious choice to stay, and yeah, so they gave me a nephrologist, a kidney doctor, because I mean, often whenever dehydration is the main issue, it's often a kidney problem, just because that's a large function of the kidneys is to keep water in the body, part of the nephron. But whatever. Nobody cares about that stuff except for nurses and doctors, physical therapists, I guess a few people. But nephrons are super cool. If you get a chance to take anatomy and physiology, I'd totally do it. It's fun. Anyway, it's my shameless plug for science, I guess. So I get my nephrologist as a doctor, and his first guess is like, well, I mean, the first guess was the obvious one to try to rehydrate me, like just using what normally works for most people. That was the IV, the saline solution. But this guy, my doctor, he's like, well, obviously that failed. So his next best guess was that my kidneys were essentially, I don't know, out for vacation. Like, basically, I guess, and I really haven't done that much reading on it, but, and this is the crux of his theory, was that the kidneys, sometimes they can just kind of like go on pause. They can pause and do nothing for a while. So he was guessing that my kidneys were just chilling, doing nothing. It's not that they were destroyed, it's just that they weren't doing their job. It's taking a long break. And how you get them to come off a break, come back from vacation, whatever metaphor, blah. You do that by putting the person into extreme dehydration. And so once the kidneys are just really, really needed, they just snap back in, like, oh, sorry for almost killing you. I'll do my job now. I guess that works sometimes. So that's what we tried. And I got super dehydrated, and by design. So dehydrated I could barely walk. It was, once again, another fascinating experience, I guess. I've always been able to walk. That was the hardest it's ever been for me to walk. Just that week. But yeah, so we find out again, and they dehydrate me by just like limiting my water. And eventually I was able to eat food, but I couldn't have like soup or anything, like nothing with a high water content. But for the first day, I couldn't eat anything. And that kind of stunk. Couldn't eat or drink anything. It was a sad day. But whatever. It eventually works out, so it's all good. So anyway, he finds out my kidneys have not turned back on, even though I'm super dehydrated. And so I'm guessing he didn't directly tell me, but I'm guessing he collaborated with an endocrinologist. So an endocrinologist is somebody who studies the endocrine system, who studies the hormone systems, which is what Addison's disease is, a problem of the endocrine system. So it talks with the endocrinologist, and they decide to do an ACTH test, which basically ACTH is the hormone your body uses to tell the adrenal gland to make more cortisol. So the idea with the ACTH test is, all right, we know based on physiology that if we put ACTH in the bloodstream, then in a normal person, the adrenal gland will make cortisol. So if ACTH, then cortisol is created. To put it in computer programming terms. Um, so they put ACTH into my IV. So we have ACTH in my bloodstream. So you know for sure it will be going down to the adrenal cortex, and it will tell the adrenal cortex to make cortisol. The only question is, will the adrenal cortex make cortisol? If it's functioning, it will. Um, but I don't make any cortisol. And so they're like, oh, Addison's disease. This is a rare disease, but somehow this bro got it. So that was a big step. There are a lot of hospitals where I've done reading on it, and quite a few people, quite a few Addisonians have gone to hospitals for all their symptoms, and doctors haven't figured it out, and they die in the hospital. Which stinks. Like it's very sad, but at the same time, like I understand. I mean, it's a very rare disease, so it's kind of hard to think about that being a potential option. But thankfully, my doctors did. I was at Boca Raton Regional Hospital, so there's a shameless plug for them. They did a great job with my care. They figured it out. They kept me alive. So, you know, thanks. I really, obviously, I appreciate that more than words can express. And I wrote them a nice letter about it, like thanks for not letting me die, pretty much. Um, so yeah, they figured it out, and then the endocrinologist that he'd been working with, that my doctor, well, the nephrologist, the endocrinologist he collaborated with to figure out my diagnosis. She came in, she talked with me about Addison's disease, and one thing she pointed out, well, I'll try to keep this super quick, but one of the symptoms, well, because I talked about earlier my hyperpigmentation, so the fact that I didn't even look like I was the same ethnicity anymore. And she asked me, she's like, so why do you think you look like that? I was like, well, I ride my bike about 40 minutes outside each day, and then like I walk between classes, and I live in South Florida, there's a lot of sun, so I probably get like an hour of sun each day. She's like, oh, okay. She's like, so when you ride your bike, do you ride it like this? I was like, no. And she's like, well, then why are the creases in your hand, um, why are they so dark? Which they aren't nearly as dark anymore. But whenever she looked at me, and those creases in my hand, they were really close, like they were really dark brown, like close to black. And I was like, I hadn't noticed those. And she's like, it's because of Addison's disease and one of the hormones that goes along with, yeah, one of the hormones that's created in huge amounts because of Addison's. It's called MSH, and basically it just makes you tan. So even like parts of you that never see the sun, it makes them tan. So that's pretty weird, but it also is further confirmation of my primary Addison's disease, which, because actually, I double checked this, but I'm pretty sure that in secondary Addison's disease, you don't get that. You don't tan. You have like all the other symptoms, but you don't have massive amounts of MSH. So that was a further confirmation of primary Addison's disease. So now I'm diagnosed, which is a big step. And I'll just share like getting out of the hospital is basically like it's great to have this diagnosis, but at the same time I'm still dehydrated, and well, I mean they just had to start giving me the hormones that you can't make anymore if you have Addison's disease. And the two are cortisol and aldosterone. So basically, all they do is this is another big misunderstanding amongst some circles about Addison's disease So anyway, I'm diagnosed, and in order to treat me, I'm taking the hydrocortisone and the fludrocortisone, which are just lab-made versions of cortisol and aldosterone, and also I still have the super low blood sodium, so we have to get my blood sodium back up, and basically just doing that. Um, the nephrologist told me, he's like, just eat as much salt as you can, um, and like even just go get Chinese or something because high sodium content. And then also I still had to limit my water, so I couldn't drink more than like two small styrofoam cups of water a day. And to think of this in context, I mean, like think of like if you put a cup of sugar into a cup of water, that's like super dense water with all that sugar in that small amount of water. But if you take like a cup of sugar and put it in a gallon of water, that's not nearly as dense in there. There's not nearly as much solute. Yeah, solute. With the sugar would be a solute, and then solvent in the water. So it's just not nearly as dense. So the same thing's going on in your body, in your bloodstream, with the blood sodium. Like we wanted to increase the density of, so the amount of sodium per like liter of blood. So in order to do that, we wanted to put in more salt while like not putting in much more water. And I mean, it's all well and good. It stinks because I mean you're eating a lot of salt, so your mouth is really dry, but you're not drinking much water, so you can't really satisfy your thirst. Um, but oh well. Like I even poured a bunch of salt on my salad. It was a disgusting salad, but you know, it worked. And ironically, actually, I mean, my doctor told me eat as much salt as you can, and to me, like, it wasn't. I didn't really take it as a personal challenge, but it's like I want to get out of here as soon as I can. I have finals like next week, so the sooner I can get out and go back to class and get back to studying, the better off I am. Um, so I eat as much as I can. I ate over 10 grams. Like, I even, whenever I got the Chinese, I got a bunch of soy packets, and because I got full after a while. I mean, I'd been eating all day and um, trying to eat as much salt as I can. So my mouth is dry. I don't want to eat, but I want to get that salt in. So I never told my nephrologist I did this, but I took the soy packets and I just rip them off and squirt them down in my mouth. I did, I think 3 or 4 of them like that. So each one had like at least a gram of sodium. And yeah, ironically, which I didn't know this before, and my doctor had never encountered it before. I guess most people weren't quite as motivated to hop out of the hospital as soon as they could, like I was. But I increased my blood sodium faster than I was supposed to, so I got in a little bit of trouble for that. And yeah, that was sad. It was basically my nephrologist is like, look, I mean, you went up too fast. Like, you can't go up that fast again, because it could cause blood vessel damage. So stop. Like, okay. I was just trying to do what you said, bro, but succeeded too well. But I didn't know I could succeed too well, so that's why I did it. But oh well. Anyway, so eventually I get stable. My blood sodium is like a 135 level, so I'm still like kind of low, but I'm not gonna die from it low. And also, like, I'm able to walk. I have like, a good amount of energy, and they let me go. It was super nice. And also, well, yeah. And then next, I mean, this is another thing from one Addisonian to another. I guess I'm assuming that somebody watching this would just be like, have just gotten diagnosed. If you are watching this and you just got diagnosed, call the endocrinologists in your insurance group, or they're in your insurance network. Call them as soon as possible. It takes them a long time to get back to you and set up an initial appointment, like 2 or 3 months. So you got to start that as soon as you can, like within the next 12 hours. you should have called all of them, or, well, I mean, gotten an appointment, and probably called all of them so that you could get in as soon as possible, because you're going to need your medication adjusted very soon, because it's, in the hospital, you're doing a dosage that's designed for coming out of that Addisonian crisis, and you don't need that dosage for very long, and it will hurt you. I mean, in my case, it took me a while to find an endocrinologist. Partially my fault being lackadaisical about it, but partially like my own insurance had a lot. They gave me a lot of misinformation. Like, I called preschool centers thinking they were endocrinologists, because that's what my insurance company told me, the numbers they gave me to call. So you're probably going to get something akin to that, like half good information, half bad information, and it's going to take you a while to find a place that will get you in sometime soon. And for me, during that time, I gained 8 pounds in 2 days of just a bunch of water weight, and my skin kind of became more or less like a water balloon type of consistency. Like, Lisa would push on my face, push my arm, and it just, like she said, it felt like a water balloon. And it was weird, and it was also uncomfortable and unsettling, because you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to gain 8 pounds in 2 days. You're not trying. So, yeah. So my suggestion is get on it as soon as you can. It's going to be harder than you think, most likely. So do it. Yeah. That's my my soapbox on the endocrinologist issue. And also, I would say, I mean, if you don't like that first endocrinologist, I mean, get them to adjust your medication levels, but I mean, don't be content with an endocrinologist who's not going to listen to you, who's not going to, like, if you're reading primary research and you have good insight on Addison's, or just good questions, or I mean any questions, I guess, like, if you're the patient, you can't really have dumb questions. If they're not going to listen to you, then it's probably in your best interest to move on to a different endocrinologist, because there are good ones out there, and they will help you, and they will make sure that your blood levels get back to normal if you have a good one. And some of them don't really seem to care. At least my first endocrinologist didn't really care. So, and she would not listen to my questions, even though my questions came straight from PubMed research, so primary research, where basically you get to see what doctors did, like what their experiment was, and what their results were. You get to see that firsthand, and I just asked questions about that, and she was very frustrated with me for asking questions about that. But whatever. The next endocrinologist I had, he embraced the questions. He wanted me to learn as much as I could about my disease so that I could handle it the best that I could. And I think that's the appropriate response to have from a doctor. And I greatly appreciated it. But yeah, so find an endocrinologist as soon as you can. And lastly, I have to do a shout out to my little wife. She was there, like, taking me to the hospital and stuff. And then also, like, she was there, like, most of the time that she wasn't working or sleeping. And yeah, so she was great. And I love you, Lisa. If you ever watch this, if you ever get through all 47 minutes. But yeah, she's pretty great. So, I don't know, I hope that anybody who went through Addison's, like, that you had at least some friends or family to help you through it. And I really don't have anywhere to go from there. But that's my story. Those are my experiences, my symptoms, and really, if you're an Addisonian or no one, whatever, I'd love to hear from you guys, and whatever. Any comments, any critiques would be awesome. But yeah, have a good day, and sorry it's 48 minutes, but hopefully it was good. Thanks for watching.